They laughed when the veteran inherited a worthless cabin until his dog uncovered a secret worth $25 million hidden beneath it. No one expected Caleb Hayes to stay. Not his family. Not the people who handed him the keys like it was a joke. A broken cabin. Dead land. Nothing worth saving. But grief doesn't always make you run. Sometimes, it makes you stay. And when his German shepherd refused to leave a single spot beside the old fireplace, everything changed. Because what they found wasn't just buried. It was waiting. Before we go on, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. The room smelled like polished wood and quiet judgment. Caleb Hayes stood near the back wall, shoulders squared, hands still, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Years in uniform had taught him how to disappear while standing in plain sight. He used that skill now. Around him, voices rose and fell, soft at first, then sharper, edged with something close to amusement. A cabin? Someone scoffed. More like a pile of rotting logs, another added. A low ripple of laughter followed. Caleb didn't move. At his side, Atlas sat perfectly still. The German shepherd's ears were alert, his amber eyes scanning the room, reading every shift in tone and every subtle tension. Unlike Caleb, Atlas did not pretend not to notice. The lawyer cleared his throat, trying to restore order. Papers shuffled. As stated in the final will, he said, adjusting his glasses. The property located in the northern Wyoming range, formerly held by Mr. Hayes's late uncle, is to be transferred in full to Mr. Caleb Hayes. Another pause, but then a quiet chuckle from across the table. Well, a cousin muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Guess every family needs someone to take the trash. More laughter. Softer this time, but sharper. Caleb's jaw tightened just slightly. Barely noticeable. A flicker. Inside something old stirred. Not anger. Not exactly. Something colder. He had heard worse. Seen worse. Felt worse. Words didn't cut as deep as memory. Atlas shifted closer, pressing lightly against Caleb's leg. A grounding weight. A silent reminder. Here, now. Caleb exhaled slowly. Across the room, his older brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. You could sell it, he said. If anyone's dumb enough to buy it, a woman beside him smirked, or just let it collapse, probably safer. The lawyer glanced at Caleb. Mr. Hayes, do you have any questions regarding the property? Silence stretched. Caleb finally looked up. His eyes were steady, but distant, like someone watching something far away. No, he said. Just one word. Flat. Controlled. Final. The lawyer nodded quickly, relieved. Very well. The transfer documents will be ready for signature. Chairs scraped. Conversations broke into smaller clusters. Caleb didn't join any of them. He turned and walked out. Atlas moved with him instantly, silent and precise, never needing a command. Outside, the air was colder, cleaner. Caleb paused at the steps, breathing it in. For a moment, everything was quiet. No laughter. No voices, just wind. He stared out across the empty parking lot, but he wasn't really seeing it. His mind had already shifted. Different terrain, different sounds, just a flicker of heat. The echo of something distant. Too loud. Too close. His fingers twitched. Atlas nudged his hand. Firm, present, Caleb blinked. The parking lot came back into focus. He looked down at the dog. Atlas held his gaze, calm, unshaken. You always know, Caleb murmured. The dog's tail gave a slow, single movement, not excitement. Acknowledgement. Caleb reached down, resting his hand against the thick fur at Atlas's neck. Warm. Solid. Real. After a moment, he straightened. All right, he said quietly. The word wasn't for anyone else. Maybe not even for Atlas. They moved toward the truck. The engine started with a low, steady rumble. As Caleb pulled onto the road, the town faded quickly behind him. Rows of buildings, familiar streets, all shrinking in the rearview mirror. He didn't look back. The drive north stretched long and empty, miles of open land, fences running like scars across the hills, sky wide enough to swallow thought. Atlas lay in the passenger seat, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed, but never fully asleep, always aware. Caleb drove in silence. No radio, no distractions, just the road and the weight of something he hadn't chosen. Hours later, the pavement gave way to gravel, then to dirt. The road narrowed, twisting through rising terrain. Pines thickened, shadows stretched longer. By the time the cabin came into view, the sun was already sinking behind the ridge. Caleb slowed the truck. There it was, worse than he expected. The structure leaned slightly, like it had grown tired of standing. The wood was gray with age, split in places. The roof sagged. One window hung crooked, barely attached. The porch creaked even before he stepped on it. For a long moment, Caleb just sat there, engine idling. This was it. The thing no one wanted. The thing they had laughed about. He turned off the engine. Silence settled instantly. Heavy, different from the town. This silence had depth, weight. Atlas lifted his head. The dog stared at the cabin, ears forward, body still. Not afraid, just alert. Caleb opened the door and stepped out. The ground crunched under his boots. The air smelled like pine, cold earth, and something older. Something that had been left alone too long. He walked slowly toward the cabin. Each step measured. The porch groaned under his weight. Atlas moved ahead this time, climbing the steps first, scanning the doorway, always clearing the path. Caleb reached for the handle. It resisted, then gave. The door opened with a long, dry creak. Inside, darkness. Dust floated in the fading light. The air was stale, untouched. Caleb stepped in. The floor held barely. The room was small, sparse. A table, a broken chair, a fireplace choked, with ash long gone cold. It felt empty, but not abandoned. Not completely. Atlas walked in slowly, nose low, reading the space in a way Caleb couldn't. The dog paused, just for a second, then moved deeper inside. Caleb watched him. Something in his chest tightened. Not fear. Something else. A feeling he couldn't name. He turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. The silence pressed in around him, different from the silence he knew. This one didn't echo. It listened. Caleb exhaled. "Well," he said under his breath. His voice sounded strange in the space, like it didn't belong. Atlas stopped near the center of the room and looked back at him. Waiting, Caleb met his gaze. A long moment passed between them. Then Caleb nodded once. "Guess it's ours now." Atlas didn't move, but somehow the space felt less empty. Outside, the last light slipped behind the mountains, and the cabin settled into darkness. Caleb Hayes stood in the middle of it, not leaving, not yet. For the first time in a long time, he stayed. The decision did not echo. It settled like dust. Caleb stood in the center of the cabin, boots planted on uneven floorboards, the last thin strip of daylight fading behind him. The door creaked shut on its own, nudged by a cold breath of wind slipping through the trees. Darkness moved in slowly, not sudden, not violent, but just inevitable. Atlas didn't flinch. The dog's posture changed, subtle but unmistakable. His ears angled forward, body still, head slightly lowered, as if listening to something deeper than sound. Caleb noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed the shift. "What is it?" he asked quietly. Atlas didn't respond, not in any way a human would understand, but he didn't relax either. Caleb reached into his pack, pulling out a small flashlight. The beam cut through the dim air, catching particles of dust that drifted like slow-falling ash. The cabin revealed itself in pieces. A cracked table, a rusted stove, walls lined with old timber, darkened by time and something else, something that felt like it had been left behind. He moved carefully, scanning corners, door frames, ceiling beams. Habit. Always clear the room. Always know your exits. Atlas moved ahead again, nails clicking softly against the wood. He stopped near the fireplace. The beam followed. Stone, thick, solid, old. The hearth was built from rough-cut rock, stacked tight, sealed with mortar that had aged into something brittle and gray. It looked untouched. But Atlas stepped closer, then paused. His nose hovered inches from the stone. Then came a low, almost inaudible sound. Not a growl. Not quite a whine. Something in between. Caleb's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Hey," he said softly. "What is it, boy?" Atlas didn't look at him. He raised one paw, placed it gently against the stone, then scratched. Just once. A soft, deliberate scrape. Caleb felt something shift in his chest, a flicker of unease. He stepped closer. The beam steadied on the fireplace. No, it looked normal. Too normal. He crouched, running his fingers across the surface. Cold, rough, unremarkable. But then, he tapped it. Once, twice. The sound came back wrong. Not solid, not completely. There was a hollow note beneath the surface. Faint, almost hidden. Caleb froze. His mind didn't race. It narrowed, focused. Atlas stepped back slightly, giving him space. But his eyes never left the stone. Caleb tapped again. Same sound, hollow. He leaned in closer, angling the light. There. A seam, barely visible. A thin line running along one side of the stonework. Not natural, not random. Deliberate. Caleb exhaled slowly. "All right," he murmured. The word carried weight this time. He stood and moved back toward his pack, pulling out a small pry bar and a folding knife. Tools, not weapons, but in his hands, and everything had purpose. Atlas shifted, pacing once, then stopping again near the hearth, waiting. Caleb returned, crouching low. He slid the tip of the knife into the seam. It resisted. Of course it did. Nothing worth finding ever gave easily. He adjusted the angle, pressed harder. The blade slipped in just enough. A faint crack, dry, old. Caleb worked slowly, careful not to break the blade. The mortar began to crumble. Piece by piece, time stretched. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind outside had quieted. Then, a sharper crack. A section of stone shifted, just slightly. Caleb pulled back, repositioning the pry bar. "Easy," he muttered. Not to the stone, to himself. He applied pressure. The stone gave. With a dull, heavy sound, it loosened from its place and tilted forward. Dust spilled out, and a rush of stale air followed. Cooler, older, different. Caleb stepped back instinctively. Atlas didn't. The dog moved forward again, nose low, drawing in the scent. Focused, certain. Caleb lowered the flashlight beam into the opening. Darkness swallowed it at first. Then shapes began to form. A cavity, not large, but intentional. Something had been built into the fireplace. Hidden, protected. Caleb reached in carefully. His fingers brushed against wood. A box, small, rough. He pulled it out slowly, set it on the floor. Atlas circled once, then sat beside him, watching. Caleb stared at the box. No markings, no lock, just age. He hesitated, not from fear. From something else. Instinct. The kind that tells you once something is opened, it can't be closed again. Atlas shifted closer. Caleb let out a quiet breath. "Yeah," he said. Then he opened it. Inside. Paper, wrapped tight, yellowed with time, and beneath it something metal. Caleb unwrapped the paper first. Carefully. It was a map. Hand-drawn. Lines marked across what looked like the surrounding land. Coordinates. Notes scribbled in tight, precise handwriting. Not recent, but not random, either. His eyes moved across it, absorbing details without fully understanding yet. Then he reached for the metal object. A key. Old, heavy, cold against his skin. Caleb stared at it. The silence in the cabin changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It felt occupied. Not by something visible, but by something waiting. Atlas let out a low sound again. Not warning, not fear, recognition. Caleb looked down at the dog, then back at the map, then at the dark opening in the fireplace. A slow realization settled in. This place was never just a cabin. And whatever had been hidden here had been meant to stay hidden. Outside, the wind returned, stronger this time. The cabin creaked in response. Caleb closed the box slowly, but he didn't put it back. He didn't cover the opening. For the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't expected to feel here. Not isolation, not emptiness, purpose. And somewhere deep in the silence, something had begun to move, not outside, not in the trees or the wind. Inside him. Caleb sat on the cold wooden floor, the map spread across his knees, the old key resting heavy in his palm. The flashlight lay beside him, its beam tilted just enough to keep the lines visible. But Atlas hadn't moved, still sitting, still watching. Not the door, not the window, the map. Caleb noticed that. Yeah, he muttered under his breath. You see it too, don't you? The dog's ears twitched slightly. That was enough. Caleb leaned closer, studying the paper. It wasn't drawn like something made for show. No decoration. No excess. Every line had purpose. Coordinates. Distances. Angles. And one thing stood out immediately. The cabin was marked, but it wasn't the center. There were other points, several, connected. His eyes traced one line that ran north, deeper into the trees, ending at a symbol he didn't recognize. A square. No label, just that. He turned the page slightly. On the edge, barely visible, a note. Entry point not visible from above. Caleb's jaw tightened. Entry point. And he looked up slowly, scanning the cabin again. Floor, walls, ceiling. Then back to the fireplace. The opening he had uncovered sat there, dark and silent. He leaned toward it, shining the light inside again. Still nothing but shadow. But now he wasn't looking for space. He was looking for intent, and he found it. At the back of the cavity, another seam, deeper, hidden behind where the box had been. Caleb sat back. A slow breath filled his chest. This wasn't storage, he said quietly. Atlas stood, just like that. No hesitation. He stepped closer to the fireplace again, nose low, then turned slightly toward the door. Not leaving, just pointing. Caleb followed the motion. The door. Then beyond it, the land, the map, the line. Everything aligned. This isn't just inside, Caleb said. It's out there. Atlas's tail moved once. Caleb folded the map carefully, sliding it into his jacket. The key went into his pocket. He stood. The room felt smaller now, not physically, mentally. Like the cabin wasn't the whole story anymore, just the beginning. Outside, the sky had turned deep blue. The last of the light fading into a thin line behind the mountains. Cold crept in fast. Caleb stepped out onto the porch. The air hit him sharp and clean. The trees stood tall and still. Dark shapes against the fading sky, but something felt different. Subtle, hard to name. His eyes scanned the perimeter. Instinct. Always instinct. That's when he saw it. Tracks. Not fresh, but not old either. Tire marks. Faint. Leading up the narrow dirt path. And stopping. Before the clearing, Caleb crouched, brushing his fingers over the ground. The pattern was shallow, partially covered by wind and debris, but it was there. Someone had been here. Recently. Atlas stepped beside him, nose close to the tracks. He sniffed once, twice, then lifted his head, alert. Caleb followed his gaze. The tree line. Nothing moved, nothing visible, but the feeling settled in anyway. That same quiet pressure. The kind that doesn't come from imagination, the kind that comes from experience. You weren't wrong, Caleb said softly. Atlas didn't relax. Caleb stood slowly, his body shifted without thought, posture changing, weight balanced. Awareness took over. Every sound mattered now. The wind, the branches, the absence of birds. Too quiet. He turned back toward the cabin. The open door, the hidden compartment, and the map in his pocket. And now, tracks. Caleb exhaled. All right, he said. The word came out steadier this time, more certain. Atlas moved ahead of him, stepping back onto the porch, then inside. Clearing again. Always clearing. Caleb followed. He closed the door behind them. This time he locked it. Not because it would stop anyone determined, but because it mattered. Inside, the air felt different. Charged. Alive. Caleb moved quickly now, gathering what he needed. Flashlight. Knife. Extra batteries. Rope. The movements were automatic. Years of training rising to the surface without effort. Atlas watched him the entire time. No confusion. No hesitation. Ready. Caleb paused once more, looking at the fireplace. The open stone. The darkness behind it. Whatever had been hidden here had not simply been abandoned. It had been protected, and now it had been found. He stepped closer and placed his hand briefly against the stone. Cold, solid, real. Then he turned. "Tomorrow," he said. Atlas's ears lifted slightly. "We follow it." The dog stood. No question. No doubt. Outside, the wind picked up again, brushing against the walls of the cabin like something searching. But inside, something had changed. Caleb wasn't just staying anymore. He was choosing. And somewhere beyond the trees, the land waited. Not empty. Not forgotten. Watching. The words lingered in Caleb's mind long after the fire had burned down to embers. He didn't sleep much that night, not because of fear, because of awareness. Every creak of the cabin, every whisper of wind against the walls, every shift in the forest beyond. It all registered, and his body lay still on the narrow cot. But his mind stayed awake, alert, scanning. Atlas didn't sleep either, not fully. The dog lay near the door, head down, eyes half closed, but every few minutes his ears flicked. Once he stood pacing slowly across the room, stopping near the fireplace, then back to the door, then back again, like he was tracking something Caleb couldn't see. Around 3:00 a.m., Caleb sat up, no sudden movement, just a quiet shift. He reached for the flashlight but didn't turn it on. "Atlas," he said softly. The dog was already looking at him. Waiting. Caleb nodded once. They moved together, slow, deliberate. Caleb stepped onto the cold floor, the wood groaning faintly under his weight. He didn't aim the light. He let his eyes adjust to the darkness. The fireplace sat ahead, also a darker shape in the shadows. Atlas approached it first. Again, same place, same focus. But this time, he didn't scratch. He sat and stared. Caleb watched him for a long moment. "You're not letting this go, are you?" he murmured. Atlas didn't move. That was his answer. Caleb stepped closer, kneeling beside him. The opening in the stone remained as he had left it. Dark. Silent. Waiting. But something was different. Not visible. Not obvious. A feeling. He leaned in, listening. Nothing. Then, a faint shift, so soft it could have been imagined. But Caleb didn't imagine things like that. His breath slowed. He angled his head slightly. There, again. A sound. Not mechanical, not loud, subtle, like something settling or moving deep inside. Atlas's body tensed, just enough that Caleb placed a hand on the dog's shoulder. "Easy," he whispered, but his own pulse had already picked up. He reached for the flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut into the opening. Still darkness. Still nothing. But now, he saw it. The seam at the back. The deeper one. More defined than before. Like something had shifted behind it. Caleb's instincts fired. Not panic, preparation. He pulled back slightly, scanning the room again. Door secure, windows unchanged, no external breach. This wasn't something entering. It was something already here. Atlas let out a low sound again, this time sharper, more urgent. Then he stood, moved to the fireplace, and pressed his paw against the inner edge of the opening. Scratched once, twice, then stopped. Looked back at Caleb, not asking, insisting. But Caleb felt it. That pull. The same one that had made him dig in the first place. He leaned forward again, this time reaching deeper into the opening. His fingers brushed the back seam. Cold, smooth, not stone, metal. He froze, then pressed. Nothing. He shifted his hand, exploring the edges. There, a slight indentation, A mechanism, hidden. Caleb exhaled slowly. You found it, he said quietly. Atlas didn't move. Caleb pressed the spot. At first, nothing happened. Then a soft internal click, barely audible. The kind of sound you feel more than hear. The seam shifted. A narrow gap opened. And from within, a faint current of air slipped out. Cooler. Deeper. Alive. Caleb pulled his hand back slowly. His chest tightened, not from fear, from recognition. He had felt air like that before. Underground. Confined. Places where light didn't belong. Atlas stepped back half a pace, then forward again. Torn between caution and purpose. Caleb stood. For a moment, he said nothing. Just listened. Just felt. The cabin wasn't quiet anymore. It was holding something. Then he made his decision. He moved quickly, grabbing his gear. Flashlight, stronger beam, knife, rope. Not everything, just enough. Atlas watched every movement. Ready, always ready. Caleb returned to the fireplace. The narrow opening had widened slightly on its own, the hidden panel now loose. He gripped the edge, pulled. The panel slid back with resistance, then gave, revealing darkness, deeper than before. Not a cavity. A passage. Caleb didn't step in. Not yet. He crouched at the edge, shining the light down. The beam stretched, and then caught something. Ground. About 6 feet below, packed earth. Flat. Not natural. Constructed. Anaphlonous. Atlas leaned forward, nose twitching, drawing in the scent. Then he looked at Caleb, not uncertain, not afraid, ready. Caleb let out a slow breath. Not tonight, he said. The words felt right. For now. He stepped back, sliding the panel partially closed. Not sealing it, just pausing. Atlas hesitated, then followed. But his eyes lingered on the opening. Longer than before, Caleb noticed. You're not done with it, he said. The dog's ears flicked. No denial. Caleb nodded. Neither am I. He moved back to the cot, sitting down slowly. The cabin felt different now. Smaller. Temporary. Like it was no longer the place, but the entrance. Atlas returned to his spot near the door. But this time, he didn't lie down right away. He stood, listening, watching, waiting. And Caleb, for the first time since arriving, didn't feel alone in the silence. He felt expected, like something beneath the cabin had been waiting, and now knew he was here. Morning would come, and with it, answers. But for now, the land kept its secrets, and Atlas wouldn't let them go. Morning came slow and cold, the kind of cold that didn't just sit on your skin, it worked its way into your bones. Caleb was already awake before the first light touched the trees. He didn't remember falling asleep, just the moment his eyes opened again, still in the same position, still aware. Atlas stood near the fireplace, not lying down, not resting, watching. Caleb sat up, rubbing a hand over his face. His muscles ached, not from labor, but from tension that hadn't fully released. You didn't sleep either, he said quietly. Atlas flicked an ear, but didn't look away. The opening remained partially hidden behind the loosened panel, but the presence of it, that hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown. Caleb stood slowly, his boots hitting the floor with a soft thud. The cabin felt tighter this morning. Smaller. Like the walls had moved in just a fraction. He grabbed the flashlight, checked the batteries, then clipped it to his belt. The rope followed, the knife, all placed where his hands could find them without looking. Routine. Control. Atlas finally turned. Stepping closer. Waiting. Caleb glanced down at him. We do this smart, he said. The dog held his gaze. That was all the agreement Caleb needed. He moved to the fireplace and pulled the panel fully open. This time, there was no hesitation. The opening yawned wide, revealing the drop beneath. 6 feet, maybe a little more. The beam of the flashlight cut downward, illuminating packed earth below. Smooth, level, intentional. Caleb crouched, testing the edge with his hand. Solid. He secured one end of the rope to a beam beside the hearth, giving it a hard pull to check tension. It held. He dropped the other end into the darkness. Atlas stepped closer, then paused. His body leaned forward, but not fully committed. Caleb noticed. "Stay," he said. Atlas didn't like that. It showed in the slight angle of his ears and the subtle shift of his weight, but he obeyed. Caleb gave a short nod, then lowered himself down. Boots hit the ground with a muted thud, and the air changed instantly. Cooler, damp. He inhaled once, slow, controlled. The smell hit him. Earth, metal, something old, something sealed. He unhooked the rope and stepped aside, scanning the space. The beam moved with him. Walls, reinforced, not stone alone. Wood bracing, aged but intact. Straight lines, angles. This wasn't a hollow. It was a passage. Atlas's head appeared at the opening above, watching. Caleb looked up. "I'm good," he said. The dog didn't move. Not yet. Caleb turned back. The tunnel stretched forward, just wide enough to walk through without turning sideways, the ceiling low, forcing him to keep his head slightly bowed. Claustrophobic, familiar, too familiar. For a moment, the light shifted. The tunnel wasn't wood and earth anymore. It was sand, heat, a different kind of silence, and his breath caught. His hand tightened around the flashlight. Atlas barked, sharp, one time. The sound snapped through the tunnel like a crack of thunder. Caleb blinked. The walls returned. Wood, earth, cold now. He exhaled, long, slow. "I'm here," he muttered. Atlas climbed down without waiting for permission this time, landing beside him, close, pressing lightly against his leg. Caleb didn't push him away. "All right," he said quietly. They moved forward together, step by step. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing more of the structure as they advanced. Marks on the walls, faint, carved, not random. Measurements, arrows, symbols. Caleb slowed. He reached out, brushing his fingers over one of the markings. Precise, deliberate, military, not official, but trained. Whoever built it understood structure. Angles, load, and flow. "This wasn't thrown together," he said. Atlas moved ahead slightly, nose low, scanning. Then, he stopped, body rigid. Caleb froze instantly. The beam followed the dog's line of sight. The tunnel opened slightly ahead, wider. A shift in space, but something else. A glint, metal. Caleb stepped forward slowly, every movement measured. The ground changed under his boots, less compact, more worn, used. He reached the opening. The light expanded into the space beyond and caught it. A surface, flat, vertical, steel. Caleb stopped. The beam steadied. It wasn't just metal. It was a door, thick, industrial, set into the earth like it had grown there. No rust, no decay, maintained even after all this time. Atlas let out a low growl, not fear, warning. But Caleb stepped closer. The air here felt different. Colder, still, like it had been sealed for years, or waiting. His eyes moved across the surface. No handle. No hinges visible. Just a smooth face. And at the center, a slot. Key-shaped. Caleb's breath slowed. His hand moved almost without thought into his pocket. The key. Heavy. Cold. He pulled it out. Held it in the beam of light. It matched. Perfectly. Atlas shifted beside him, pressing closer again. Not stopping him, but not relaxed either. Caleb stared at the slot, at the door, at the weight of what stood in front of him. This wasn't a hidden compartment. This wasn't a forgotten space. This was something built to be found, by the right person, at the right time. His fingers tightened around the key. He stepped closer. On the metal surface, a faint, distorted version of himself stared back. Not who he used to be. Not who he had been. Someone else. Someone standing at a threshold. Atlas nudged his leg. Gentle. Grounding. Caleb exhaled. Then, slowly, he raised the key and brought it toward the lock. The moment stretched, held, balanced between past and present, between staying and stepping forward. The key hovered inches from the slot, and for the first time since he arrived, Caleb hesitated. Not out of fear, but because he understood something now. Whatever was behind that door would change everything. Atlas didn't look away. Neither did Caleb. And in the cold, silent space beneath the cabin, the decision waited. Caleb didn't rush it. His hand hovered, the key inches from the slot, his breath steady but measured. But years of training had taught him one thing above all else. If something feels important, it is. If something feels final, it probably is. Atlas shifted beside him, pressing closer, his body warm against Caleb's leg. Not pushing, not pulling, just there. Caleb lowered the key. Not away, not yet, just enough to think. His eyes moved across the steel door again. No scratches, no damage, no signs of forced entry. Whatever was behind this, no one had broken in or gotten out. Caleb exhaled slowly. Not blind, he murmured. Atlas's ears flicked. Caleb stepped back half a pace, lowering the flashlight slightly and scanning the surrounding walls again. Details. Always details. The tunnel didn't end at the door. There were faint lines carved into the dirt and wood beside it. Measurements, angles, the same symbols he'd seen before. But clearer here. More deliberate. He crouched, running his fingers along one of the markings. Flow direction, he muttered. Another, load support, another, vent. He paused. Vent, his head tilted slightly. He looked up, the ceiling. At first glance, it was the same packed earth and wood bracing, but then a gap. Small, narrow, a shaft. Caleb raised the beam. The light climbed upward and vanished into darkness. A ventilation shaft. Old, but functional. Air still moved through it. That explained the cool draft. This place wasn't sealed completely. It was maintained, designed. Caleb stood again. This wasn't just hidden, he said quietly. It was built to last. Atlas shifted again, this time moving slightly ahead, then stopping near the edge of the steel door. His nose hovered near the base. Then he pawed lightly at the ground. Once. Twice. Caleb watched, then stepped closer. The dirt there was different. Less compact, more disturbed. He knelt and brushed it aside with his hand. Underneath a thin metal strip. Another seam. Smaller. Parallel to the base of the door. Caleb's pulse picked up slightly. Secondary access, he whispered. Atlas let out a low sound. Agreement. Caleb pulled his knife, sliding the blade carefully into the narrow edge. It resisted, then gave. A soft click. The strip lifted slightly. Caleb hooked his fingers underneath and pulled. The panel opened, revealing a smaller compartment. Inside, wires, old but intact. And a second mechanism. Not for entry, for something else. Caleb leaned closer. Recognition hit him immediately. A failsafe, he said. His voice was low, almost respectful. This wasn't just a door. It was a system built by someone who expected interference or mistakes. He studied it for a moment longer, then gently closed the panel again. He stood. Atlas was watching him closely now, waiting for the next move. Caleb looked back at the door, then at the key, then at the tunnel behind them. And something shifted inside him. Not fear, clarity. He stepped forward. No hesitation this time. The key slid into the slot. Perfect fit. Cold metal against metal. His hand tightened. He turned it. Slow, deliberate. The sound that followed wasn't loud, but it was deep. A heavy internal movement. Locks disengaging. One, then another, then another. Atlas stiffened, not backing away, bracing. Caleb held the key steady as the final lock released with a solid, grounded click. Silence followed, thick, waiting. Then, a low mechanical shift. The door moved. Not swinging, sliding to the side, slowly, reluctantly, like it hadn't been opened in years. Dust fell in thin streams as the seal broke, And from within, darkness, but not empty. Caleb raised the flashlight. The beam entered first, and then the room revealed itself. Not a tunnel, not a cave, a chamber. Constructed, reinforced, clean, too clean. Metal shelving lined the walls. Boxes, crates, sealed containers. And at the center, a structure. Larger, solid, industrial, a vault. Caleb stepped forward slowly. Atlas followed, close, always close. The air inside was different, controlled still. Like time had paused here. The beam moved across the space. Nothing out of place, nothing broken. Everything preserved. Caleb's boots echoed softly against the floor as he moved deeper inside. Each step careful, measured. His eyes scanned everything. Entrances, exits, angles. The vault stood ahead, its surface reflecting the light in muted dull tones. No rust, no damage, maintained, like it had been waiting. Caleb stopped a few feet away. His breath slowed again. His mind quieted. The noise gone. For the first time since stepping into the tunnel, the pressure eased. Atlas sat beside him, not tense, not alert, calm. That alone told Caleb everything he needed to know. This place wasn't a threat. It was something else. He stepped closer to the vault, ran his hand along the surface. Cold. Solid. Real. But his reflection stared back at him. Faint. Distorted. But there. A man standing in front of something he hadn't earned, but had been led to. Caleb swallowed, then reached for the handle. There was no lock. Not anymore. The system had already decided. The door opened. And inside the truth waited. Caleb didn't open it all at once. The vault door moved slowly, heavy and controlled, like it had weight far beyond steel. The hinges didn't squeal. They didn't resist. They obeyed. That was what unsettled him most. Someone had built this place to last, and someone had expected it to be opened. The beam of his flashlight slipped through the widening gap first. Then his eyes followed. Rows, order, precision. Not chaos, not storage, system. Caleb stepped closer. Atlas stayed tight at his side, one shoulder brushing against Caleb's leg, every step synchronized without thought. The vault opened fully, and the light revealed everything. Stacked cases lined the walls, each one sealed, labeled with markings Caleb didn't recognize at first, but understood after a second look. Dates, coordinates, codes, military style. He moved forward slowly, boots echoing softly against the reinforced floor. His breath had changed. Not fast, not panicked, but deeper. He reached the first case, metal, cold. He unlatched it carefully. Inside, cash, bundled tight, clean, not scattered, not hidden in desperation. Organized, calculated. Caleb stared, not reacting, just processing. He closed it gently, moved to the next, and opened it. Gold bars, stacked, measured, silent. He swallowed once, still no emotion, just understanding. A small inventory sheet tucked beneath the second case listed reserve totals and dates. By the figures recorded there, the cash and gold represented roughly $25 million. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This was planned. Atlas moved, not toward the money, not toward the gold. He turned away, walked along the edge of the vault, nose low, searching. Caleb noticed immediately. Not interested, he murmured. Of course he wasn't. Atlas didn't care about wealth. He cared about truth. The dog stopped near the far wall. A smaller shelf, less obvious. Caleb followed. The flashlight beam shifted. There, a box, wood, older than everything else. Not sealed, not labeled, different. Caleb reached for it. His fingers paused just before touching it. Something in his chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. This was the reason. Not the money. Not the vault. This. He lifted the box carefully, set it on a nearby surface, opened it. Inside was paper, a notebook, worn, handled, used. Caleb stared at it for a long moment, then opened it. The first page wasn't writing. It was a map. familiar. The same layout as the one he had found, but more detailed, layered, connected. His eyes moved quickly, then slowed. The next page, writing, clear, precise, not rushed, not emotional, controlled. Caleb read the first line. If you're reading this, you didn't leave. His throat tightened. Atlas sat beside him, still. Present. Caleb kept reading. This place was never meant for the ones who walk away. It was built for the ones who stay long enough to understand what they're standing on. Caleb's fingers tightened slightly on the page. The words didn't feel like instructions. They felt like judgment. Or maybe recognition. He turned the page. More notes, diagrams, or references to the tunnel. The ventilation, the fail-safe system. Everything he had just discovered was explained. Not in detail, but enough. This system was designed to outlast time, not people. Most won't have the patience. That's the point. Caleb exhaled slowly. His chest felt different now, lighter and heavier at the same time. Atlas leaned against him slightly, grounding, always grounding. Caleb turned another page. The handwriting changed slightly. Less technical, more personal. If you made it this far, it means you stayed when it was hardest. That tells me more about you than anything else ever could. Caleb stopped. The words hit something deeper. Something buried. Images flickered. Moments. Decisions. Times he had stayed and times he hadn't. His jaw tightened. He turned the page. The world doesn't reward patience anymore. It rewards speed, noise, leaving before things get difficult. This place was built against that. Caleb closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, focused, present. He kept reading. The money isn't the point. It never was. It's a test, a tool, a responsibility. His gaze shifted slightly. Back to the vault, to the stacks, the gold, the weight of it, then back to the page. You don't take this and leave. If that's your plan, you're not the one this was meant for. Caleb felt that. Not as a threat, as truth. Atlas shifted again, his head resting briefly against Caleb's arm. Caleb placed a hand on the dog's neck. Steady, warm, real. He turned the final page. One line, simple, clear. You stayed. That means you're worthy. Silence followed, not empty, full. But Caleb sat there, the notebook open in his hands, the vault around him, the weight of everything settling slowly into place. He wasn't shocked, he wasn't overwhelmed, he was aware. For the first time since stepping into this place, he understood. This wasn't something he had found. It was something he had been led to. Atlas looked up at him. Their eyes met. No confusion, no doubt, just understanding. Caleb nodded once, not to the vault, not to the money, to the choice, the one he had already made without realizing it. He closed the notebook carefully, held it for a moment longer, then looked around the room again, different now, not as something hidden, but as something entrusted. And in that quiet, controlled space beneath the cabin, for the first time since the war, Caleb Hayes didn't feel lost, and he felt chosen. The word didn't sit easily. It wasn't pride. It wasn't relief. It was heavier than that. Caleb stood slowly, the notebook still in his hand, his eyes moving across the vault again. Not with surprise now, but with responsibility. Atlas rose with him, always in sync. Caleb slipped the notebook into his jacket, close to his chest. Not stored. Kept. He took one last look at the stacks of money, the gold, the organized precision of it all. Then he turned away. That was the moment, the one that mattered. He didn't linger. He didn't count. He didn't touch anything else. Atlas watched him closely. And for the first time since entering the vault, the dog relaxed. Just a fraction, but enough, Caleb noticed. Yeah, he said quietly. Not the point. Atlas's tail moved once as they stepped out of the vault together. Caleb pulled the heavy door closed behind them. It sealed with a low, final sound, the kind that marked a boundary, not an ending, a decision. The tunnel felt different now. Shorter, clearer, like something that had once been hidden had already done its job. They moved back toward the rope. Atlas climbed first this time, quick, controlled, then turned immediately, watching as Caleb followed. When Caleb pulled himself up through the opening, the cabin air hit him differently. Warmer, lighter. The space didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied, not by something physical, but by meaning. He stood there for a moment, catching his breath. Atlas walked the perimeter once, nose low, checking the room. Routine. Always routine. Then he returned to Caleb's side. Caleb looked at the fireplace, the open panel, the hidden passage beneath, then slowly, carefully, he closed it, not sealing it permanently, just restoring the surface. Stone sliding back into place, the seam disappearing like it had never been disturbed. Atlas watched the entire time, then looked at Caleb. Something in his eyes had changed. Less urgency, more certainty. Caleb nodded. "We don't rush this," he said. The dog's ears flicked. Agreement. Caleb moved to the table, pulling the notebook back out. He opened it again. This time, he read slower, page by page, not scanning, studying, understanding. There were more notes, more than he had seen before. Details about the land, not just the structure beneath it, but the terrain above. Water lines, soil composition, points marked across the map. The connections were clear. It wasn't just a vault, it was a system, a network, built with intention, built with patience, built for someone who would take the time to see it. Caleb ran his fingers along the edges of the pages. He could almost feel the time behind them, the effort, the thought, the discipline. This wasn't about hiding money, he said quietly. Atlas lay down beside him, listening. Caleb turned another page. More personal writing, fewer diagrams. If you're still here after finding it, you've already made the choice. Most people don't realize when they've made it. They think it happens in a moment. It doesn't. It happens slowly, every time you decide not to leave. Caleb leaned back slightly. The words hit differently now, not as instructions, as reflection. He thought about the moment at the lawyer's office. The laughter, the looks. He could have walked away, sold the place, never come here. He thought about the first night in the cabin, the silence, the weight of it. He could have left then too, packed up, driven back. He hadn't, not because he knew why, but because he stayed. Atlas shifted closer, resting his head lightly against Caleb's knee. Caleb placed a hand on the dog's neck, fingers pressing gently into the fur. "You knew," he said quietly. Atlas didn't move, but something in his posture, something steady, something grounded, answered. Caleb closed the notebook again. This time, he didn't feel overwhelmed. He felt focused. The cabin wasn't just a place anymore. It was a starting point, a responsibility, a test that hadn't ended. It had just begun. Outside, the wind had calmed, and the trees stood still, the kind of stillness that comes before something shifts. Caleb stood and walked to the door. He opened it slowly. The light had changed. Morning had fully arrived, casting long shadows across the clearing. The land stretched out in front of him, not empty, not forgotten, structured, alive, in ways he hadn't seen before. Atlas stepped out beside him, immediately alert. Scanning, Caleb's eyes moved across the ground. The tracks, still there, faint, but present. He stepped forward, crouching again, touched the dirt. Fresh enough, recent. Atlas lowered his nose again, sniffed, then lifted his head, looking out toward the tree line, same direction as before. But this time, more focused, more certain. Caleb followed the line. Something in his chest tightened, not fear, awareness. "You weren't wrong," he said. Atlas's body stiffened slightly, not defensive, ready. Caleb stood slowly, the weight of the notebook in his jacket, the memory of the vault beneath his feet, the tracks leading into the trees, all connected now. This wasn't over. It had never been just about finding something. It was about protecting it, understanding it, earning it. Caleb stepped back onto the porch, closed the door behind him, locked it again, not because it would stop someone, but because it marked a line. Inside, outside. He looked down at Atlas. The dog met his gaze, steady, unshaken. Caleb nodded once. "We're not alone out here," he said. Atlas didn't react with fear. He leaned forward slightly. Focused. Caleb looked back toward the trees. The stillness. The silence. The feeling of being watched. But this time it didn't make him step back. It made him step forward. Because now he understood something he hadn't before. The land wasn't just waiting to be discovered. It was waiting to be defended. And Caleb Hayes was no longer just a man who stayed. He was the one who had been chosen to stand. The thought didn't make him feel stronger. It made him more careful. Caleb stood on the porch, eyes fixed on the tree line, the wind brushing lightly across his face. The morning light stretched long across the clearing, but it didn't reach deep into the woods. That was where the shadows held. That was where the tracks led. Atlas stepped forward, one paw at a time, his body low, not afraid, but focused. Caleb watched him closely. "Not yet," he said. The dog paused, then looked back, waiting. Caleb nodded once. "We don't chase. Not blind." Atlas held his gaze, then stepped back, understanding. Caleb turned and headed toward the truck parked at the edge of the clearing. He opened the back and pulled out a small metal case. Inside were tools, not weapons, but everything served the same purpose: precision, control, preparedness. He checked everything, then closed it again. The air shifted. Subtle, but there. Atlas's head snapped toward the road. Ears forward, body still. Caleb froze instantly. His eyes followed the narrow dirt path leading up the mountain. At first, nothing. Then, movement. A shape. A vehicle. Slow. Deliberate. Coming toward the cabin. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Didn't take long," he muttered. Atlas let out a low warning sound. Not loud. Controlled. Caleb stepped forward, positioning himself just off the porch where he could see without being fully exposed. The truck came into view. Old, dust-covered, engine low and steady. It stopped just short of the clearing, not pulling all the way in. That told Caleb everything. The driver knew where the clearing began and deliberately stopped short of it. The door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, lean, movement slow, measured, not cautious, comfortable. That was worse. Caleb recognized him immediately. Victor Lang, the nearest neighbor and the man who had contacted Caleb after the transfer papers were filed, offering to buy the land site unseen. The man who had smiled too easily. Atlas's body stiffened. The low growl returned. Victor raised a hand. Casual. Like he was greeting an old friend. "Morning," he called out. His voice carried easily through the clearing. Caleb didn't respond right away. He studied him. Posture, eyes, hands, everything. Victor took a few steps forward, stopped, maintaining distance, respecting space, or pretending to. "Figured I'd stop by," Victor said. "Check in." Caleb's voice came back flat. "You already did that." Victor smiled slightly. "Did I?" His eyes moved. Not to Caleb, to the cabin, to the ground, to the space around them, reading, calculating. Then, for just a fraction of a second, Victor's eyes paused on the porch, on the door, on the exact spot beneath which the tunnel lay hidden. Caleb saw it. That flicker. That knowing. His chest tightened. Atlas stepped forward, placing himself just slightly ahead of Caleb. Protective. Silent. Victor noticed that too. "Good dog," he said. Atlas didn't react. Didn't break eye contact. Victor's smile faded just enough to reveal something underneath. Not friendliness. Interest. "So," Victor continued, hands slipping casually into his pockets. "You planning on staying out here long?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch. Let Victor sit in it. Then Caleb answered, "I am." Simple. Clear. Victor nodded slowly, like he expected that. "Place like this," Victor said, glancing around. "Most people don't last." Caleb's eyes didn't leave him. "I'm not most people." Victor chuckled softly. "No," Victor said. "I'm starting to see that. Another pause, longer this time. The air shifted again, heavier. Victor took a step closer. Just one. Atlas's growl deepened. Victor stopped, held his hands out slightly. "Easy," he said. "Not here to cause trouble." Caleb's voice stayed level. "Then say what you came to say." Victor studied him, really studied him now. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. His tone changed, less casual, more direct. "That land you're standing on," he said, "it's not what you think it is." Caleb didn't react. Victor continued. "People have tried to own it before," he said. "Didn't go well." A faint breeze moved through the trees. The silence pressed in again. Caleb tilted his head slightly. "You? One of them?" he asked. Victor smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "I tried to buy it," Victor said. "That's different." Atlas shifted his weight, ready. Victor's gaze flicked to the dog again, then back to Caleb. "You find anything yet?" he asked. The question landed. Not casual, not random, direct. Caleb didn't answer, didn't blink, didn't move. Victor watched him, waiting, measuring. Then he nodded once, like he had his answer anyway. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Thought so." The words settled into the space between them, heavy, unspoken things filling the gaps. Caleb's hand shifted slightly at his side, not reaching, not threatening, just ready. Victor took one step back, then another, not retreating, repositioning. "Listen," he said, his voice lowering slightly. "Whatever you think you found." He paused, choosing his words. "It's bigger than you." Atlas's growl sharpened. Victor raised his hand slightly again. "Not a threat," he said quickly, "just truth." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "I'll decide that." Victor held his gaze, then slowly nodded. "Yeah," he said, "I figured you would." He turned and walked back toward his truck. But before he reached it, he stopped, looked back. "One more thing," he said. Caleb didn't move, and Victor's eyes locked onto his. "Out here," he said, "things don't stay buried forever." The words hung in the air. Then he got into the truck. The engine started. And just like that, he was gone. The dust settled slowly in his wake. The silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence anymore. Caleb stood there, watching the empty road. Atlas remained beside him, still, alert. The wind moved through the trees again, but now it carried something else. Not just quiet, not just presence. Warning. Caleb exhaled slowly. "He knows," he said. Atlas didn't look away from the road. Neither did Caleb. Because now this wasn't just about what had been hidden. It was about who else was coming for it. And somewhere beyond the trees, the next move had already begun. Caleb didn't move for a long time. Not after the truck disappeared. Not after the dust settled. He stood there, eyes fixed on the empty road, feeling something shift inside him again. But this time, it wasn't curiosity. It was pressure. Real. Immediate. Atlas stayed beside him, body still. Eyes forward, not searching anymore. Watching. Waiting. Caleb finally exhaled. "All right," he said quietly. The word felt heavier now, less like a plan, more like a line being drawn. He turned and walked back into the cabin. Atlas followed immediately. The door shut behind them with a firm, final sound. Inside, the air felt different again. Not mysterious, not curious, focused. Caleb moved quickly. Not rushed, precise. He checked the windows, the door, the floorboards, the fireplace, every point of entry, every weakness. Atlas mirrored him while moving from corner to corner, nose low, checking what Caleb couldn't see. When they finished, they met in the center of the room. Caleb crouched, pulling the notebook back out. He flipped through it again, faster this time, not reading for meaning, reading for answers, for anything that mentioned others. There, a page near the back. Different tone, shorter lines. Not everyone who finds this place is meant to keep it. Caleb's jaw tightened. He kept reading. Some will try to take it. They won't understand what it is. They'll only see what it holds. Caleb looked up slowly. Atlas was already watching him. They'll only see what it holds, Caleb repeated. Money, gold, value. Not the system, not the purpose, not the responsibility. He closed the notebook. The truth settled in hard now. Victor wasn't guessing. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough, and that meant he wouldn't stop. Caleb stood, walked back to the fireplace, opened the panel again. The tunnel waited, quiet, unchanged. But now it wasn't discovery, it was defense. Atlas stepped closer. This time his posture was different, more protective, more aware. Caleb looked down at him. This is where it matters, he said. Atlas held his gaze. No hesitation. Caleb nodded once, then closed the panel again. Fully, carefully, sealing it back into place, not hiding it, protecting it. He stood there for a moment longer, then turned away. The cabin was no longer just shelter. It was a perimeter, a boundary. Caleb moved to the table, grabbing the map again. He spread it out, studied the lines, the points, the connections. What if someone else knew about the vault? Then, this wasn't the only access. There had to be more. Other entries, other paths. His finger traced the line leading away from the cabin. North, into the trees, to that same square, the one marked without explanation. Atlas stepped closer. His nose hovered just above that point. Then he looked up at Caleb. Caleb nodded slowly. You feel it, too. Atlas didn't move. That was answer enough. Caleb folded the map, slipped it back into his jacket, then grabbed his gear again. This time, more, not just tools, preparation, layers, supplies. Atlas watched every movement. Ready. Always ready. Caleb paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle. His eyes closed for just a second. And in that moment, the past tried to come back. The noise, the chaos, and the memory of choosing survival over staying. The faces, the weight of it. His chest tightened, his breath shortened. Atlas pressed against him. Firm. Grounding. Caleb opened his eyes. The cabin came back. The quiet. The present. The choice. Different. This time he wasn't leaving anything behind. He turned the handle, opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Clean, sharp, real. Atlas stepped out first, scanning, clearing. Caleb followed. The land stretched out ahead, wide, silent, waiting. But now it wasn't just watching. It was being watched. From both sides. Caleb stepped off the porch. His boots hit the dirt with purpose. No hesitation. No doubt. He looked toward the tree line, toward the path marked on the map, toward whatever came next. This ends one way, he said quietly. Atlas stood beside him, still and steady. Caleb glanced down at the dog, then back at the forest. And we don't walk away from it. Atlas's tail moved once. That was enough. Caleb took the first step forward. Not into uncertainty, into decision. Because now, it wasn't about what he had found. It was about what he was willing to protect. And for the first time in years, Caleb Hayes wasn't running from anything. He was walking straight toward it. The forest swallowed them fast. One step off the clearing and the light changed. The open sky disappeared behind thick pine and shadow. The ground soft underfoot, layered with years of fallen needles and quiet decay. Atlas moved ahead. Not far. Never far. Just enough to lead. Caleb followed the map in his head now more than in his hands. The lines, the angles, the direction. They had already settled into him. North. Slight incline. A ridge. Then a drop. Everything matched. Too well. The deeper they moved, the quieter it became. No birds, no distant movement. Just the faint sound of their own steps. And something else. A presence. Not seen, but felt. Atlas stopped. Instantly, Caleb froze. The dog's body went rigid. Ears forward. Head low. Then a sound. Behind them. Not loud. Just a shift. A branch. A weight. Caleb turned slowly. Nothing. But the feeling didn't leave. He scanned the tree line, angles, distance, cover. Someone was there. Or had been. Atlas let out a low growl. Focused. Not panicked. Tracking. Caleb's hand moved slightly. Steady. Ready. Stay close, he whispered. Atlas didn't need the command. They moved again, faster now, not rushed, but no longer exploring. Advancing. The terrain shifted. The ground rose slightly, then leveled. The trees thinned just enough to reveal a structure, half-buried, camouflaged, concrete, old, but intact. Caleb slowed. The square from the map. This was it. Atlas approached carefully, circling once, nose low. Then, he stopped at the edge of the structure and sat, waiting. Caleb stepped closer. The entrance wasn't obvious. Just a faint outline where the earth met the concrete. Another hidden door. Another system, but this one felt different. Less controlled, less safe. He crouched, brushing away dirt with his hand. The seam revealed itself, metal beneath, locked. Caleb reached into his pocket, the key, but before he could use it, Atlas barked, sharp, urgent. Caleb spun, too late. Movement burst from the trees. Victor. Not alone. 2 men behind him. Not reckless, organized. Prepared. Caleb stepped back instantly, positioning himself between them and the structure. Atlas moved in front of him, low, protective. Victor stopped a few yards away. His expression had changed. No more smiles. No more pretense. You went looking, he said. Caleb didn't answer. Victor glanced at the structure, then back at Caleb. You found it, he said. Not a question, a statement. The men behind him shifted slightly. Not aggressive, but ready. Atlas growled, louder now. Victor's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Caleb. You don't understand what you're standing on, Victor said. Caleb's voice stayed level. I understand enough. Victor shook his head slightly. No, Victor said. You understand part of it. He stepped forward. Atlas lunged, fast, controlled. Not an attack, a warning. Victor stopped immediately, hands raised. Easy, he said, but his eyes stayed locked on Caleb. This place, this system, it wasn't built for you to sit on it, Victor continued. Caleb didn't move. Then why was it left to me? He asked. Victor smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. It wasn't left, he said. It was hidden. The words hung in the air. Caleb felt something shift. Not doubt. Recognition. Victor continued. Men like your uncle, they didn't build things like this to walk away from them, he said. Then where is he? Caleb asked. Victor didn't answer. Not directly. He just looked at the structure again, then back at Caleb. You really think you're the first one to find this? He said quietly. Atlas stepped forward again, closer, more aggressive. Victor's men shifted, tension rising. Caleb's voice cut through it. Take one more step, he said calmly, and you'll regret it. Silence, heavy. Victor studied him, really studied him. Then, he nodded slowly. Yeah, he said, you're different. He took a step back. His men followed, not retreating, resetting. This isn't over, Victor said. Caleb didn't respond. He didn't need to. Victor's eyes moved to Atlas one last time, then back to Caleb. You're not the only one who stayed, he said. Then he turned, walked back into the trees. His men followed, gone. Just like that, the forest closed behind them. Silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was charged. Caleb stood there, his breathing slow, steady. Atlas remained in front of him, still watching, still ready. Caleb reached down, placing a hand on the dog's back. Firm, grounding. You held, he said quietly. Atlas didn't move, but his body eased slightly. Caleb looked back at the structure, then at the path Victor had taken, then back at the structure again. The choice wasn't coming anymore. It had already been made. He stepped forward, no hesitation, no doubt. Because this time, he didn't run. And whatever came next, he would meet it, standing. Caleb didn't move right away. The forest had gone quiet again. but it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one carried weight. What had just happened? What almost had? What still might? Atlas stood beside him, chest rising and falling steady, but his eyes remained fixed on the direction Victor had disappeared. Watching, always watching. Caleb followed that line one last time, then let it go. For now, he turned back to the structure. The hidden concrete entrance sat half buried, as if the land itself had tried to reclaim it. Not to hide it, but to protect it. Caleb crouched again, brushing away the dirt more deliberately this time. No rush. No hesitation. Atlas moved closer, staying tight at his side. The seam revealed itself fully. Caleb reached into his pocket. The key. Cold, familiar. He held it for a moment, then slid it into place. It fit. Perfect. He turned it. The mechanism responded immediately, clean, controlled, just like the vault beneath the cabin. A low internal shift, then silence. Then, the door opened. This time Caleb didn't hesitate. He stepped inside. Atlas followed. The chamber below was different from the vault. Less polished, less final, but still intentional. Lights flickered to life overhead. Dim, automatic, triggered by movement or pressure long ago. Caleb paused, looked around. Workstations, old equipment, maps pinned to walls, notes, layers of planning. This wasn't storage. This was where it had been built. The origin. He stepped deeper inside. Atlas moved ahead, slower now, more cautious. Not from fear, but from respect. The room felt personal. Caleb's eyes moved across the walls. Photos. Faded. Pinned. Carefully. Men in uniform. Different times. Different places, but the same posture, the same look. One of them. He stopped, stepped closer. His uncle. Younger. Stronger. Standing beside other men. Not smiling. His expression was hard, but not empty. Caleb stared at the image. Something in his chest shifted again. Not pain. Something softer, understanding. Atlas came to his side, sat still. Caleb reached out, touching the edge of the photo. "You built all this," he said quietly. It wasn't a question, it was recognition. He turned. The room continued beyond. A desk, old worn but maintained. On top another notebook, different from the first. Caleb approached slowly, picked it up, opened it. The writing inside was less structured, less technical, more human. "If you made it here, then you didn't just find it. You followed it." Caleb exhaled slowly. He kept reading. This place was never about money. It was about building something that lasts longer than fear. His eyes moved across the page. "I didn't leave this for someone strong. Strength fades. I left it for someone who stays." Caleb closed his eyes for a moment. The words settled deep. Atlas leaned against him. Solid. Real. Caleb opened his eyes again. Turned the page. "War doesn't end when you come home. It just changes shape. If you're reading this, then you know that." Caleb's hand tightened slightly on the page. His breath slowed. Memories didn't hit him this time. They didn't crash. They passed, like something acknowledged, not avoided. "I couldn't fix what I carried," the writing continued, "but I could build something that helps someone else carry theirs." Caleb swallowed. His gaze lifted from the page. The room, the system, the land above the cabin, all of it, connected, purpose, not survival, something more. Atlas shifted again, resting his head against Caleb's side. Now Caleb placed a hand on him. "You brought me here," he said softly. Atlas didn't respond. He didn't need to. Caleb closed the notebook, held it for a moment, then looked around one last time. This wasn't just a hidden place. It was a continuation, something meant to be taken forward, not kept buried. He turned and walked back toward the entrance. Atlas followed immediately. When they stepped back into the daylight, the air felt different again. Not sharp, not cold, open. The trees moved gently now, the wind softer. Caleb stood at the edge of the clearing, looked out across the land, the cabin in the distance. the path behind him, the forest ahead. All of it. His responsibility now. Not ownership, stewardship. Atlas stood beside him. Not ahead, not behind, beside. Equal. Caleb nodded once, and then turned back toward the cabin. Days passed, then weeks. The cabin changed, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. Repairs, reinforcements, care. The land seemed to respond. Paths were cleared, systems checked, structures understood. Caleb didn't rush. He didn't take from the vault. Not yet. He read, learned, followed. Atlas stayed with him through everything, always close, always aware. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the mountains, Caleb sat on the porch. The notebook rested beside him, open to a blank page. Atlas lay at his feet, calm, at peace. For the first time in a long time, so was Caleb. Not because the past was gone, not because the world had changed, because he had. He picked up the pen, paused, then began to write. Not instructions, not maps, plans for what came next, for who might come after, for something that didn't end with him. He looked out at the land one more time, the place everyone had laughed at. The place no one wanted, the place that had been waiting. And now, it wasn't just a place anymore, it was a beginning. Caleb Hayes didn't rebuild his life by leaving what broke him, he rebuilt it by staying where it mattered. And beside him, Atlas closed his eyes. Not because there was nothing left to watch, but because for the first time, there was nothing left to fear. But here's the real question. If you were in Caleb's place, would you stay or would you walk away? Type 1 if you would stay and fight for it. Type 0 if you would leave and start over somewhere else. I read every single comment, and I want to know what you would do. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something real, make sure you subscribe because the next story might hit even closer to home.